Ethan slammed on the brakes, and the old Ford screeched to a stop in the middle of the rain-soaked country road. In the headlights, two small figures appeared. Two little girls, maybe 5 or 6 years old, stood right in the middle of the road, holding hands, barefoot, wearing thin, colorful dresses soaked through. Twins. He realized it instantly, from their identical dark faces with huge brown eyes full of pure terror. What the hell were they doing out here? Ethan cursed under his breath as he jumped out of the car. The nearest town was 10 miles away, and on both sides of the road stretched nothing but thick forest. The girls pressed closer to each other but didn't run. They just stared at him with those enormous eyes that seemed to hold everything at once, fear, hope, and a kind of childlike resignation. "Where are you from, little ones?" he asked, trying to keep his voice gentle, though frustration boiled inside him. It just had to be today, when he was already late for an important meeting in the city. The girls stayed silent. Only the older one, or the one who looked a few minutes older, tightened her grip on her sister's hand. "Gypsy kids, huh?" Ethan guessed, noticing their tan skin and long black hair, tangled and dirty. One of the girls nodded, and the other suddenly began speaking quickly, in a sing-song language he didn't understand, but one thing was clear: they were begging for help. In the car, the girls huddled in the far corner of the back seat, pressed together like frightened animals. Ethan turned the heater on full blast. Even though it was a warm September evening, the kids were shivering, maybe from the cold, maybe from fear, or both. "What are your names?" he asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. The braver one spoke softly. "I'm Sarah, and this is Stella." Pretty names, Ethan thought. Not the usual country kind. "And where are your parents?" The girls exchanged a look, and Stella, the younger one, suddenly burst into tears, burying her face in her sister's shoulder. Sarah stroked her tangled hair and whispered, barely audibly, "Mom died. Dad kicked us out, said we're not his." Same old story, Ethan thought. Among gypsies, that kind of thing wasn't rare. A wife dies, the new stepmother doesn't want someone else's kids. Or maybe the late wife really had cheated, who could tell? "What, he just threw you out on the road?" he asked, not quite believing it. Sarah nodded. "Said, go wherever you want. Then kicked us and left." There was no anger or resentment in her voice, only a strange grown-up weariness, like she already knew the world was cruel and unfair. Ethan drove on, his mind racing. What was he supposed to do with them? Hand them over to the police? They'd end up in foster care, and everyone knew what that meant. Take them home? He pictured Linda's face, his wife, paralyzed after a stroke for 3 years now, and his heart clenched. Linda could barely manage the basics even with Nancy the caregiver's help. And now 2 little gypsy girls on top of that? But he couldn't just leave them on the road either. He wasn't a monster. Maybe he could take them to the city, leave them at the church. Father Michael was kind. He wouldn't turn them away. Or drop them off at the hospital, let the doctors figure it out. His thoughts kept spinning. The girls were quiet in the back seat, their soft breathing barely audible. They must have fallen asleep, lulled by the warmth and steady hum of the engine. All right, he decided. I'll take them home for tonight. Linda has a good heart. She wouldn't let them suffer. Then he gave a bitter smile. Good heart? Linda could barely speak anymore, only mumble unintelligibly and move her eyes. The house greeted them with warm light shining from the windows. Nancy, the caregiver, was still there. Ethan left the girls in the car and hurried inside. Nancy, a woman in her early 30s with a tired but kind face, was just putting on her jacket. "Ethan, you're back already? I thought you weren't coming till tomorrow." "Nancy, listen, something happened," he quickly told her about the girls. Nancy gasped. "Gypsy kids? Oh no, Ethan, really? They're all thieves, you know that. They start picking pockets before they can walk." "They're 5 or 6 years old," Ethan protested. "I don't know, maybe," Nancy muttered, shaking her head. "Just be careful they don't steal something. You've got enough trouble with Linda already." Ethan wanted to argue, but Nancy was already halfway out the door. "Anyway, I've got to go, my daughter's home alone." Linda ate, took her meds, diaper changed. "See you tomorrow." She rushed out without even glancing at the girls, who were just stepping into the house. The girls froze in the hallway, staring around. The place was simple but tidy. Ethan did his best to keep things in order. Family photos hung on the walls, he and Linda when they were young, wedding pictures, beach vacations. Linda was smiling in all of them, beautiful, bright, with long red hair. Now it was gray and thin, and her smile was gone. Sarah tugged Stella's hand. "Is the lady sick?" she asked, nodding at the photo. "How do you know that?" Ethan asked, surprised. The girl shrugged her narrow shoulders. I can feel it. Mom could too. She healed people with herbs. Ethan snorted. A gypsy herbal healer, plenty of those around, selling plants and fortune-telling for cash. Come on, I'll introduce you, he said and led them to the bedroom. Linda was lying propped up on pillows under a blanket. The TV played some soap opera, but her eyes were closed. When she heard footsteps, she looked up, startled, her gaze shifting between her husband and the girls. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and took her left hand. The right one was completely paralyzed. Linda, this is Sarah and Stella. I found them on the road. They've got nowhere to go. They'll stay here tonight, and tomorrow I'll figure something out. Linda looked at the girls, and for a second, something like curiosity flickered in her eyes. She tried to speak but only managed a muffled sound. Sarah let go of her sister's hand and stepped closer. May I? She asked, and without waiting for an answer, she took Linda's paralyzed hand. Ethan almost pulled her away, but something in the girl's focused little face stopped him. Sarah closed her eyes and began tracing Linda's hand with her small fingers, whispering softly in her melodic language. Stella joined in, taking Linda's other hand. Mom taught us, she whispered. If a person wants to live, you can help them. Ethan watched the strange scene, two little gypsy girls whispering to his paralyzed wife, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Linda, though, stared at them with wonder, as if she could see something he couldn't. All right, that's enough, he said after 5 minutes. Come on, I'll get you something to eat and put you to bed. But the girls didn't let go. Just a little longer, Sarah pleaded. The lady wants to walk. We can feel it. Ethan waved a hand. Let them play. It couldn't do any harm. He went to the kitchen, reheated some soup, and cut up some bread. The girls must be starving. Who knew when they'd last eaten? When he came back, they were sitting on the floor by the bed, softly singing something that sounded like a lullaby. Linda was watching them, and Ethan could have sworn she was smiling. Not that crooked grimace she sometimes managed after the stroke, but almost like before. The girls ate hungrily but neatly. They were clearly starving, but even so, they had manners, strange, for gypsy kids. How did your mom die? Ethan asked, pouring them tea. Sarah stopped chewing and looked at her sister, then at him. She got sick. Coughing bad, blood came out. The camp moved on, and Dad didn't take us. He said, die here like your mother. Her voice was calm, without drama, just a statement of fact. Ethan felt anger rise inside him. What kind of bastard abandons his own kids? Though maybe they weren't even his, who could tell in those camps? Did you try to get your mom treated? We tried, Stella said. But she needed a doctor, and there aren't doctors in the camp. Only old Rose, but she said it wasn't her kind of illness. Said she needed a hospital. And your dad didn't take her there? He said it was too expensive. And Mom didn't have papers. Ethan set them up in the guest room, cold and unused since Linda got sick. It used to be where her sister Vera stayed when she visited from New York, but she came less and less after the stroke, probably couldn't bear seeing her sister so helpless. He made up the bed with clean sheets, brought an extra blanket. It was getting chilly at night. The girls crawled under the covers, snuggled close to each other, and fell asleep almost instantly, worn out from the past few days. Ethan stood there for a while, looking at them, so small, so defenseless, and utterly unwanted. Abandoned by their camp, and if the authorities took them in, where would they end up? In some foster home or orphanage, growing up to be what? If they were lucky, cleaners or cashiers. If not. He shook his head, chasing away the dark thoughts, and went to see Linda. His wife was awake, though she usually fell asleep quickly after dinner and her evening meds. So, Linda, should we keep them? He asked, sitting down on the edge of the bed. Linda looked at him and slowly, with effort, nodded. I was thinking the same thing, he said. Where else can they go? I'll drive into town tomorrow, talk to my lawyer, maybe I can file for some kind of guardianship or something. Linda nodded again, then tried to say something. This time, words came out. Debris. Yes, good girls, he agreed softly. Strange, though. What were they doing with you earlier? Healing you or something? Linda smiled faintly and closed her eyes. Ethan tucked the blanket around her shoulders, kissed her forehead, and left the room. Tomorrow was supposed to be a big day, a meeting in town about a lumber supply contract. If it went well, there'd be enough money for Linda's treatment and maybe for the girls too, if it came to that. That night, a strange sound woke him. Someone was singing. He sat up, listening. The song was coming from Linda's room. Barefoot, he ran across the cold floor. The bedside lamp was on, and in its dim light he saw an unbelievable scene. The girls stood on either side of Linda's bed, holding her hands, singing softly in their melodic language. The tune was beautiful, soothing. Linda wasn't asleep, she was watching them, tears streaming down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of pain or despair. Ethan had seen those before. These tears were different, pure, light, almost joyful. "What are you doing?" he whispered, afraid to break the spell. "The lady is crying inside," Sarah answered without stopping her song. "We're helping the tears come out. When they do, she'll feel better." Ethan almost told her that it was nonsense, that singing couldn't heal a stroke, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the expression on Linda's face. For the first time in 3 years, she looked alive. He went back to his study. He hadn't slept in the same room with Linda since she got sick, didn't want to disturb her. But he couldn't sleep now, thinking about those strange little girls. How did they know Linda was crying inside? He'd felt it himself. His wife had shut down after the stroke, stopped fighting. The doctor said she could regain some movement if she found the will to live. But Linda had given up, going through her therapy like a machine, without hope. And now these gypsy kids were talking about tears inside. Just before dawn, he finally drifted off and dreamed of Linda, young again, with her fiery hair flowing, dancing with him at their wedding. She whispered, "I'll walk again." The girls promised. He woke up to someone shaking his shoulder. Nancy stood over him, eyes wide with shock. "Ethan! Ethan! Hurry!" He jumped up, heart pounding. Something must have happened to Linda. Another stroke? A heart attack? Barefoot, still in his sweatpants, he raced to the bedroom and froze in the doorway. Linda was standing. She stood by the bed, one hand gripping the headboard, the other, the paralyzed one, resting on little Stella's shoulder. Sarah stood on the other side, holding her around the waist. "Ethan," Linda said. The word came out almost clearly, almost like before. Ethan took a step forward, then another, afraid this was a dream, a hallucination. But it wasn't. Linda was trembling, unsteady, but she was standing. "How?" was all he could whisper. "Devaki," Linda smiled. And the girls smiled too, proud, calm, as if what they had done was perfectly ordinary. Behind him, Nancy was sobbing. "It's a miracle, a real miracle from God." Ethan gently wrapped his arms around Linda, feeling her body shake from the effort, her muscles long and used. "Sit down," he said softly. "Don't push yourself too hard." But Linda shook her head. Now stand." She stayed on her feet for 5 more minutes before her legs gave out. Ethan helped her lie down, covered her, and kissed her forehead. The girls stayed beside the bed, holding Linda's hands, whispering softly in their strange language. "What did you do to her?" Ethan asked, not accusingly, but in awe. "Nothing," Sarah shrugged. "Mom said, when someone really wants to do something but is scared, you have to help them not be scared. The lady wanted to stand, but she was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That she wouldn't make it. That you'd be sad. That she was a burden." Ethan stared at the 5-year-old girl saying such grown-up words and couldn't think of a reply. The whole house was buzzing all day. Nancy called everyone she knew, telling them about the miracle. By noon, Doc Patterson, the old country paramedic who'd first examined Linda after her stroke, showed up. He shook his head in disbelief after checking her pulse and blood pressure. "I don't get it, but it's a fact. She's moving, and she's trying to talk. Miracles do happen." By lunchtime, Linda's sister Vera had arrived. Nancy had called her too. Vera, a polished New Yorker in her mid-30s, burst into the house like a storm, in a designer suit and perfect makeup. "Where is she?" "Linda! Linda!" When she saw her sister sitting up in bed with pillows behind her, she burst into tears. "Linda, you're sitting." "Sitting," Linda smiled. "And talking." "Talk ing." Vera hugged her sister, crying and laughing at the same time. Then she noticed the girls sitting quietly in the corner. "Who are they?" "Our girls," Linda said slowly, each syllable clear. Vera listened to Ethan's story with open skepticism. "Gypsy kids? Ethan, have you lost your mind bringing gypsies into your home?" "Vera, you can see it yourself." Linda stood up. "They did something, I don't know what, but they did. Coincidence. She was bound to recover eventually, it was just time." But Linda shook her head. "No. Girls help Ed." Vera looked at her sister, then at the girls. She crouched down beside them. "What are your names?" "Sarah and Stella." "And what did you do to my sister?" The girls glanced at each other. "We sang," said Sarah. "And we asked." "Asked who?" "Mom. She's in heaven, but she hears us." Vera snorted softly. Right. Ethan, I hope you're not planning to keep them here. I am, Ethan said firmly. Linda wants them here too. Vera turned to her sister. Really? Linda nodded. You're both crazy, Vera muttered. Fine, your choice. But don't say I didn't warn you. She left that evening, leaving some money for the girls and promising to come back in a week. Ethan never made it to his meeting in town. He called, apologized, postponed it. Today was a day of miracles. No contract could be more important. By evening, Linda could already take a few steps around the room, holding onto the wall. Her right arm still barely worked, but her fingers were moving, and that alone was a miracle. The girls stayed close, massaging her arms in their strange, gentle way, singing their soft songs, telling her things in broken English. And Linda smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 3 years. At dinner, Ethan made something simple, potatoes with canned stew, but the girls ate with such delight, as if it were a feast. He asked, Girls, where did you learn to do that? You know, the healing? Sarah, the older one, replied. Mom taught us. And Grandma. All the women in our family could do it. But not everyone can be healed. And who can't? Those who don't want to. The ones who have anger inside. The ones who hurt others. Stella added. Aunt Linda is kind. We felt it right away. Ethan looked at these incredible children and wondered where such wisdom came from in girls so young. Maybe life had taught them. Or maybe they truly had something special, a gift. That evening, after tucking the girls into bed, Ethan sat beside Linda. She could already speak almost clearly, though still slowly. Ethan, we'll keep them, right? Of course, if that's what you want. I do. Very much. They're special. I can see that, he nodded. Linda, what did they actually do to you? Did you feel something? Linda thought for a moment. Warmth. Like everything inside was heating up. And also like someone was calling to me. My mother, I think. She said, Get up, honey, it's too early for you to give up. Ethan shivered, it all sounded mystical. But the fact was undeniable. Linda had stood up, started talking, come back to life. And if it took 2 little gypsy girls to make that happen, so be it. That night, a faint rustling woke him. He listened, soft footsteps. Light, childlike. He stepped into the hallway and saw Sarah standing by the window, gazing at the moon. Can't sleep? He asked quietly. She turned to him. Mom came. In a dream? No, for real. She said you're good people. She said we can stay here. Ethan didn't know what to say. He came closer and gently brushed a hand over her tangled hair. We won't hurt you, I promise. Sarah looked up at him with her huge brown eyes. I know. And we won't hurt you either. Then she went back to the room where her sister was sleeping. Ethan stood at the window for a long time after that, watching the moon and thinking about the strange turns of fate. In the morning, their family lawyer, Nicholas Parker, an old friend, came over. Ethan had called him to ask about guardianship. Parker, a thin, elderly man in his usual tweed jacket, listened to the story and shook his head. It's going to be complicated, Ethan. First of all, the girls have no documents whatsoever. Second, they're gypsies. That always brings problems. Some long-lost relatives could show up claiming rights. What relatives? Their father threw them out. That's what the kids say. Try proving it. Of course, you can file for temporary custody, start the paperwork, but be ready for inspections, social workers, endless bureaucracy. What about adoption? Linda interrupted. She was sitting in an armchair. Ethan had moved her to the living room, and she was listening closely. Adoption is even harder, Parker sighed. You're both over 40, you don't have children of your own, and Linda's health. Linda corrected him. I'm getting better now. The lawyer looked at her in surprise. The last time he'd seen Linda, a year ago, she'd been bedridden and mute. Yes, I can see that. Impressive progress. Still, the courts don't like placing children with sick guardians. The girls had been sitting quietly in the corner the whole time, clinging to each other. Suddenly, Stella stood up and walked over to him. Mister, we want to live here. Nobody's looking for us. Dad said, You're not mine, get lost. Nicholas Parker blinked, clearly uncomfortable. Sweetheart, I understand, but the law. We'll heal Aunt Linda completely, Sarah said. And Uncle Ethan too. Ethan frowned. What's wrong with me? Your heart, Sarah said softly. It hurts sometimes. You don't say it, but we feel it. Ethan froze. It was true, he'd been having occasional chest pain for months, brushing it off as stress or fatigue. Nicholas Parker stared at the girls with a hint of superstitious fear. What are they, psychics or something? I don't know what they are, Ethan said, but they got Linda back on her feet. That's a fact. After the lawyer left, Ethan finally drove into town for his postponed meeting. The contract was signed quickly. His partners trusted him. On the way back, he stopped at a big supermarket, filled the trunk with groceries, and then wandered into the kids' section. He bought dresses, jeans, t-shirts, and shoes for the girls. A young sales clerk with heavy makeup helped him pick out the sizes. For your daughters? She asked. Yes, Ethan answered without thinking. And then he realized how easily the word had come out. Daughters. Yesterday he hadn't had any children, and today he had two. Foster or not, Gypsy or not, they were his. At home, a surprise awaited him. Linda was standing on the porch, actually standing, holding onto the railing for balance, while the girls danced around her, clapping and singing. Ethan, look, Linda called out, and her voice was full of joy, joy he hadn't heard since their wedding day. She took one step, then another, then a third, slowly, unsteadily, but on her own. Ethan dropped the shopping bags and rushed to her, scooping her up carefully and spinning her around. She laughed like a girl. I'm walking, Ethan. I'm walking. The girls jumped up and down, squealing. We told you Aunt Linda would run again. That evening, while the girls tried on their new clothes, squealing with delight, especially over the sparkly pink princess dresses, Nancy called. She sounded excited. Ethan, I told everyone about Linda's miracle, and guess what? People are coming to see you tomorrow. What people? The sick ones. Remember Stephen Grimoff, that guy paralyzed after the sawmill accident? His wife wants to bring him to your girls. And old Martha, she's got arthritis, can barely walk. Hold on, Nancy, Ethan interrupted. This isn't a hospital, and the girls aren't saints. Not saints? Ethan, they made Linda walk. Let them try. Ethan hung up, lost in thought. He didn't want to turn the house into some kind of healing center. But if the girls really could help people. He went to the living room. Linda was sitting in her chair, teaching the girls how to embroider. It was a heartwarming sight, 3 heads bent together over a hoop, Linda explaining, the girls carefully pushing their needles through the fabric. Linda, he said, Nancy called. Says sick people are coming tomorrow, to see the girls. Linda lifted her head. Let them come. But, Ethan, if they can help, why not? Girls, do you mind? Sarah and Stella exchanged a look. We'll help if we can, Sarah said seriously. But not everyone can be healed. Only those who really want it. The next morning, people started arriving early. The first was Stephen Grimoff, a big man who'd been paralyzed from the waist down after a sawmill accident. His young wife, Tanya, looked exhausted and near tears. We've tried everything, Tanya said. Took him to the regional hospital, to healers, even to psychics. If you're girls. They're not ours yet, Ethan interrupted. And they're not sorceresses. Just kids. But Tanya kept looking at the girls with desperate hope. Stephen was carried into the house on a stretcher and laid on the couch. The girls stood quietly for a moment, watching him. Then Sarah shook her head. Uncle doesn't want to. What do you mean, doesn't want to? Tanya flared up. Stephen, tell them. Stephen, a grim, bearded man, muttered, what do they know? Just a couple of brats. Stella stepped closer and looked him straight in the eyes. You're scared of losing your job. The sawmill pays more than disability checks. Stephen choked. What the hell are you talking about? But his flushed face gave him away. She was right. If you don't want to walk, we can't help you, Sarah said simply and stepped back. Tanya burst into tears. Stephen, please. What job? You're disabled. Exactly, he snapped. Disabled. And as long as I am, you won't leave me. You'll pity me. But if I get up on my feet, you might just run off with some younger guy. An awkward silence fell. Then Tanya slapped him hard across the face. Idiot. For 3 years I've washed you, changed you, cared for you like a child, and you. She ran out of the house sobbing. Stephen lay staring at the ceiling. The girls came closer again. If you change your mind, we'll help, Sarah said quietly. But first you have to forgive your wife. She loves you. Stephen said nothing. He was carried out the same way he'd come in, on a stretcher. An hour later, Tanya called. Her husband had apologized and wanted to try again. Come back tomorrow, Ethan said. By noon, old Martha showed up, an 80-year-old woman bent and twisted by arthritis, leaning heavily on her cane. The girls circled around her, felt her hands, looked into her eyes. We can help, Stella said, but it will hurt. Sweetheart, everything hurts anyway, Martha sighed. The girls sat her down in a chair and began to massage her hands and legs, whispering softly. The old woman winced and groaned but didn't stop them. After half an hour, she stood up, still stooped, but without her cane. Good Lord, my legs are holding me. She unclenched her fingers. Do this every day, Sarah showed her a few motions. And drink this herb tea, we'll write it down for you. The old woman kissed both girls and slipped them $20 each. For candy, my dears. Then she left, humming a cheerful tune. Next came a young woman with a little boy, about 4 years old, who didn't speak. The doctors say it's autism, the mother explained. But I don't believe it. He understands everything, he just won't talk. The girls played with him for a long time, showing him little stones they'd somehow pulled from their pockets, singing soft songs. The boy watched them, entranced. And then, suddenly, he said, "Mom." The woman burst into tears, grabbing her son in her arms. "Michael, my baby." The boy said nothing else that day, but his mother left smiling, full of hope. By evening, Ethan was exhausted from the endless stream of visitors. Linda looked tired too, though she tried to be welcoming, offering tea, asking about their ailments. Only the girls showed no sign of fatigue. For them, it all seemed like a game. "Girls," Ethan asked over dinner, "why do you help some people and not others?" "We can feel it," Sarah shrugged. "If someone wants to live, we can help. If they've already given up, no." "And how do you do it?" "The healing, I mean." The girls exchanged glances. "We don't heal," Stella said. "We just help the power flow." "What power?" "The one that's everywhere," Sarah said simply. "In the earth, the sky, in people. Mom said it's a gift from God. Not everyone gets it." That night Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about these incredible children who had appeared in his life as if from the sky. Or maybe not from the sky, maybe it was fate. He and Linda had never been able to have children, doctors had given up long ago. And now, when all hope seemed gone, these girls had arrived. And not just girls, healers, seers. Who were they? He remembered his grandmother's stories about holy people who could heal with their hands. But those were saints. And these were gypsy girls. Then again, who said God's gifts were meant only for the white and the baptized? The next morning the phone rang. It was Nicholas Parker. "Ethan, I've got news. I did some digging. A gypsy camp, probably the one the girls came from, was in the neighboring state about a month ago. A young woman died there, tuberculosis. 2 girls disappeared. The description matches. And now? Well, the camp moved on, across the border, to Mexico or farther. No one's looking for the kids. So you can go ahead with guardianship. I'll handle the paperwork." Ethan hung up and smiled. The girls would stay with them for good. He went to find Linda. She was already up, dressed, sitting in the kitchen helping the girls make dumplings. "Linda," he said, Nicholas Parker called. "We can file for guardianship. No one's looking for the girls." Linda smiled. "That's wonderful. Girls, would you like to stay with us forever?" Sarah and Stella exchanged a quick glance, then ran to hug her. "Yes, yes." Linda held them close. "You're our daughters now. Right, Ethan?" "Right," Ethan said, his voice trembling. A lump rose in his throat. He hadn't cried since his mother's funeral, but now he could barely hold it back. "Uncle Ethan, what's wrong?" Stella asked anxiously. "Nothing, just happy," he said. News of the miracle girls spread across the county. Every day, people came to Ethan's house, some walking, some carried on stretchers. The girls didn't treat everyone, some they refused right away, after just one look. "He drinks," Sarah would say about a man with shaking hands. "She lies," Stella would mutter, shaking her head at a woman complaining of migraines. But many they did help, and people left, if not fully healed, then at least with hope. Ethan tried taking money for their time, but Sarah scolded him sternly. "You can't. Mom said if you take money for a gift, it goes away." So they worked for free, accepting only what people offered, eggs, milk, potatoes, whatever they could spare. The girls eventually helped Stephen Grimoff, too. He came every day for a week. The girls spent an hour with him each time, massaging his legs, singing softly, making him do strange exercises. On the 7th day, Stephen moved his toes. Tanya burst into tears, and Stephen could barely hold his own back. "Girls, you're angels." "Not angels," Sarah corrected him. Uncle Stephen just decided to really live again. A month later, Stephen was walking, with a cane, slowly, but walking. The first thing he did was bring the girls a huge stuffed bear. "This is for you, my miracle girls." The bear found a permanent home in their room, and the sisters slept hugging it from both sides. Linda was recovering with astonishing speed. Within 2 weeks, she was walking around the house unaided. In a month, she was out in the garden. Her right hand was still weak, but she could already hold a spoon, a brush, even write a little. The doctor from the county hospital, who came to check on Linda, could only spread his hands in disbelief. I don't understand. According to every rule of medicine, recovery this fast is impossible. What did you do? Lived, Linda smiled. And my daughters helped. The doctor glanced at the girls, who were quietly playing with dolls in the corner. Vera had brought a whole bag of toys from New York, and shook his head. Miracles. Pure miracles. Vera started visiting every weekend now. At first, she was wary of the girls, but she eventually warmed up, especially after Stella cured her chronic migraines, which had plagued her for 10 years. Listen, Linda, Vera said one afternoon, what if we take the girls to New York? We could get them into some medical research center. They could help people, make good money. Vera, are you crazy? Linda exclaimed. They're children. What kind of research center? Well, not now, when they're older. No, Ethan said firmly. The girls are going to live a normal life. Go to school, choose their own path someday. Their gift will stay with them. It took 2 months to finalize the guardianship, an endless maze of paperwork, inspections, and commissions. Social services questioned everything, Ethan and Linda's age, Linda's illness, though she had almost completely recovered, and the lack of official papers for the girls. But Nicholas Parker was an experienced lawyer. He knew which strings to pull. In the end, the guardianship was approved. The girls officially became Sarah and Stella Wolf, taking Ethan and Linda's last name. Now you're our daughters on paper, Linda said, hugging them. We already were, Sarah replied. Now the social workers just know it too, Stella added, and everyone laughed. By winter, life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. The girls started attending a kindergarten prep group in the nearby town. Ethan drove them there every morning. The teacher, Jennifer, had been cautious at first. You never knew what to expect from Gypsy kids, she thought, but Sarah and Stella turned out to be quiet, polite, and astonishingly quick learners. Math was their favorite subject. They were the fastest counters in the class. You've got remarkable daughters, Jennifer told Linda one day. I know, Linda smiled. They're special. No, I mean really special. It's like they know what other kids are thinking. Yesterday, Pete Siders was about to pull Mary's ponytail, and Sarah walked right up to him and said, Don't, Pete. It hurts. He just froze, mouth wide open. The girls continued to help people, but now only by schedule, on Sundays, after church. Ethan insisted. You're still children. You need to learn and play, not work. Word of the Miracle Girls spread far beyond their town, first across the county, then the whole state. A reporter from a local newspaper came wanting to write a story. Ethan threw him out. This isn't a circus. Other strange people showed up too, offering money to have the girls examined by specialists. Ethan drove them away as well. Our daughters aren't lab animals, he said. But then came the story that changed everything. In early December, a well-dressed woman arrived from the county center in a brand new Mercedes. With her was a boy, about 10 years old, in a wheelchair. It was clear he had cerebral palsy. I'm Valentina Cross, the woman introduced herself. My husband's a state congressman. I heard about your girls. Ethan was about to refuse. He didn't like politicians, but Linda touched his hand. Let them try. The boy's name was Daniel. Despite his illness, his eyes were bright and curious. Ma'am, are your daughters really magic? He asked Linda. They're not magic, sweetheart, Linda smiled. They just know how to help. The girls came over to the wheelchair, looked at Daniel, then at each other. We can help, Sarah said. But not right away. We have to do it every day. Valentina threw up her hands. Every day? But we live in the county capital. That's a 2-hour drive. Then live here, Stella shrugged. Valentina hesitated. But my job, my husband. Your choice, Ethan said calmly. Valentina left, but 3 days later she came back, with suitcases. I rented a house in town, she announced. We'll stay until Daniel gets better. And so the treatment began. Every day, the girls went to Daniel's house. It was just a 5-minute walk. They massaged his arms and legs, sang their gentle songs, encouraged him to move. Daniel tried with all his might. You know, he said one day, I want to be a soccer player. You will be, Sarah said confidently. A week later, Daniel wiggled his toes, for the first time in his life. Valentina cried with joy. 2 weeks later, he could bend his knee. By New Year's, he stood up, with help. When Valentina's husband, Michael Cross, came home for the holidays, he couldn't believe his eyes. His son was standing, holding onto the bars of his therapy frame, but standing. "It's a miracle," he exclaimed. "Girls, you're angels. Tell me, how much do we owe you?" "Nothing," Ethan said firmly. "The girls don't take money for helping." Michael looked stunned. "But I can't just walk away like that. Listen, let me build you a new house. This one's too old." "No need for a house." "Then what? A car? A trip to the ocean?" Ethan started to refuse again, but Linda interrupted. "You know what, Michael? If you really want to help the girls get proper papers. Their birth certificates are fake. Nicholas Parker arranged something temporarily, but it's not official." Michael brightened. "Oh, that's easy. I've got connections. Consider it done." And sure enough, a month later, the girls had real birth certificates listing Ethan and Linda as their parents. "Now you're ours not just by law, but by name," Linda said joyfully. By spring, Daniel was walking, slowly, with a walker, but walking. The doctors at the county hospital, where Valentina took him for a checkup, were baffled. "Impossible. With his diagnosis, that's unheard of." "Well, mine does," Valentina said proudly. That spring brought another milestone. The girls started first grade. Ethan wanted to enroll them in the local village school, but Linda insisted on the county one, better teachers, better education. Every morning, Ethan drove them there. The trip took only half an hour. Their teacher, a young woman named Jennifer Harris, quickly noticed how gifted they were. "They pick up everything instantly, and they read fluently already, though they say no one ever taught them." "We taught ourselves," Sarah explained, "from signs and picture books. At first, some kids teased them. Gypsy witches. But that didn't last long. The girls never got offended, and besides, they really could see things." One day, Cole Peterson teased Stella. "Hey, fortune teller, guess what my mom made for lunch?" Stella answered calmly. "Soup and meat patties, and dried fruit compote." Cole nearly choked. It was spot on. After that, the teasing stopped. People treated them with a kind of wary respect. But the most important thing was how kind the girls were. When Mary Sokolov's mother was diagnosed with cancer, Sarah and Stella came to their house and stayed with her all evening. No one knew what exactly they did, but afterward, the woman began to recover. The doctors called it remission, but Mary knew it was the girls. From that day on, she became their best friend. That summer brought another encounter, one that would change everything again. An old gypsy man came to the Wolf house, gray-haired, wrinkled, dressed in worn clothes. "I need to see the girls," the old man said to Ethan. "What girls?" Ethan asked warily. "Sarah and Stella. I'm their grandfather." Ethan was about to send the old man away, but something in his eyes, sorrow, pain, exhaustion, made him stop. "Wait here," he said, and went to get the girls. When the girls saw the old man, they froze. Then Sarah whispered, "Grandpa Mihai." The old man nodded. "Yes, it's me. I came to say goodbye." "You're dying?" Stella asked with childlike bluntness. "Yes. But first, I wanted to see you, and to ask for forgiveness." He sank to his knees before them. "Forgive me for not protecting you. When your father threw you out, I was with another camp. I didn't find out until a week later. I searched for you, but..." The old man began to cry. The girls stepped forward and hugged him. "We're not angry, Grandpa. Are you happy here?" "Very happy. We have a mom and dad now." The old man looked at Ethan. "Thank you, sir. You did what I couldn't. You protected them. These girls are special, you know?" "I know," Ethan said. "No, you don't know everything. In our family, such children are born only once in 100 years. Their great-grandmother was like that. She healed people, saw the future. But that gift is both a blessing and a curse. People fear what they don't understand." "No one will hurt them here," Ethan said firmly. The old man nodded. "I believe you. Take care of them." He stroked the girls' heads, whispered something in Romani, and left. A week later, Linda saw a small article in the county paper. They'd found the body of an old gypsy man in the woods. The girls cried when they found out, but then Sarah said quietly, "Grandpa's with Mom now. They're happy there." By autumn, Linda had fully recovered. She cooked again, sewed, tended the garden. Most importantly, she laughed, sang, and enjoyed life again. "You know, Ethan," she said one evening, "I thought my life was over after the stroke. But it turns out it was just beginning. My real life." Ethan hugged her. The girls gave you back to me and gave us a family, a real family. The girls were growing up, but their gift didn't fade, it grew stronger each year. They no longer just healed, they could see things before they happened. One day, Stella told Ethan, "Dad, don't go to the forest tomorrow." "Why not?" "Just don't." Ethan listened, and the next day, he heard that a giant pine tree had fallen across the very road he usually took, crushing the forest ranger's truck. The man had barely survived, but the vehicle was totaled. In 4th grade, something happened that made headlines across the county. A commission from the Department of Education came to inspect the school. Among them was a sharp-tongued, unpleasant woman named Joan Powell, thin, bitter, constantly nitpicking. She went especially hard on Jennifer Harris. "How do you run your classes? Why are the children noisy? Why aren't they all in uniform?" Jennifer was nearly in tears. Then Sarah stood up. "Ma'am, why are you so angry?" Joan blinked. "What? How dare you? You're angry because you're hurting. Right here," Sarah pointed to her abdomen, "and because you're afraid your husband will leave you for someone younger." The classroom fell dead silent. Joan turned pale, then red. This is outrageous. I'm filing a complaint." She stormed out of the room. Jennifer was terrified. "Sarah, why did you say that? She was hurting you, and she really is sick. If she doesn't see a doctor, she could die." The next day, the principal was summoned to the department. Joan had indeed filed a complaint. But a week later, Joan came back herself, quiet and shaken. She found Sarah. "Girl, how did you know?" "I felt it," Sarah said simply. "I got checked. They found a tumor. Early stage, they say it's treatable. If it weren't for you," Joan's eyes filled with tears. "And you were right, my husband is seeing his secretary." Sarah gently touched her hand. "Get treatment, and forgive him if you still love him, or let him go if you don't." That story made the papers. A girl clairvoyant saves an official's life. Reporters swarmed the Wolf House again, but Ethan chased them all away. "This isn't a circus," he repeated. Only one journalist, a young man from the local paper, son of a forest ranger Ethan knew, was allowed to write an article. It turned out honest and respectful, just a simple story about an extraordinary family. When the girls turned 12, something happened that shook the entire town. Little Johnny, the 4-year-old son of a young teacher named Roxanne, went missing. He'd been playing in the yard and vanished. The whole town searched, combing through the woods, checking wells and the river. By evening, police and search dogs joined in. But the boy was nowhere to be found. Roxanne ran to the Wolf's house, sobbing. "Girls, please, help me. You can see things, can't you?" Sarah and Stella clasped hands and closed their eyes. They stood still for 5 long minutes, then Sarah said, "He's alive. In the forest, near the old ranger's cabin. But he's not alone." "Who's with him?" "A woman. She's sick in the head. She thinks Johnny is her little boy who died." At first, the police didn't believe it, but Roxanne insisted. They went to the old cabin, and sure enough, there she was, a city woman by the look of her clothes, with Johnny beside her, scared but unharmed. The woman turned out to be an escaped psychiatric patient who had lost her own child and gone mad. Johnny was returned safely to his mother, and the woman was taken back to the hospital. From then on, people started calling Sarah and Stella the guardian angels of the town. But not everyone loved them. Some were jealous, especially those the girls had refused to help. Like Zena Korneve, who wanted them to cast a love spell on a married man. "We don't do magic," the girls told her. "You can't force love." Zena took offense and started spreading rumors that the girls were witches, that Ethan and Linda had sold their souls to the devil. Most people didn't believe it, but a few whispered in corners. Chief among them was Claudia Peters from the church council, a bossy 60-year-old woman who considered herself the most righteous person in town. "They're not Christians," she declared. "Gypsy heathens. Never baptized, never blessed, don't even pray properly." Linda answered calmly. "The girls are baptized, and we go to church every Sunday." "Then why doesn't Father Michael bless them?" Claudia pressed. Father Michael, a wise man, replied cautiously, "There are many kinds of gifts, and it's not for us to judge where they come from." But one day, even Claudia Peters came to the girls for help. Her grandson, visiting for the summer, had fallen off his bike and hit his head badly. The boy slipped into a coma, and the doctors were helpless. Desperate, Claudia's daughter, Hope, went against her mother's wishes and brought the girls. They sat by the boy's bedside all night, singing softly and holding his hands. By morning, he opened his eyes. Claudia fell to her knees before them. Forgive me, you foolish old woman. We're not angry, Stella said with a gentle smile. From that day on, Claudia became their fiercest defender. Anyone who dared say a bad word about the girls quickly regretted it. Years passed. The girls grew into young women, beautiful, graceful, radiant. By 14, they were already taller than Linda, slender and poised. Their hair, which Linda had let grow down to their waists, shimmered like raven wings. And their eyes remained the same, huge, all-seeing, and filled with quiet depth. The boys at school couldn't take their eyes off them, but the sisters always stayed a little apart, not out of arrogance, just different, as if they lived in a world of their own. "Mom, are we going to get married someday?" Sarah asked one night while Linda brushed her hair before bed, a ritual they'd kept since childhood. "Of course you will," Linda said warmly. "You're such beautiful young women. But we're not like everyone else. So what? There will be people who'll love you for exactly who you are." Stella, who'd been reading on the couch, looked up. "I know who I'll marry." "Oh, really? Who?" Linda smiled. "A doctor," Stella said simply. "He'll heal the body, and I'll heal the soul." "And I'll marry a teacher," Sarah added. "He'll teach kids knowledge, and I'll teach them kindness." Linda laughed softly. "Well, we'll see about that." But deep down, she thought, the girls were rarely wrong about their visions. In 9th grade, a new biology teacher arrived at the school, Paul Anderson, a young man straight out of university. Tall, lean, with glasses, the classic academic type. The older girls swooned over him, but he was serious and didn't pay them any mind. He did, however, show genuine curiosity about Sarah and Stella, not as a spectacle, but from a scientific point of view. "Girls, would you let me run a few tests? What you can do doesn't fit into modern medicine, but that doesn't mean it isn't real. It just means science hasn't explained it yet." The girls agreed. Paul conducted harmless experiments, guessing what was on cards, finding hidden objects, identifying an illness from a photograph. They passed almost every test. Paul was amazed. "This is real extrasensory perception. I should write a paper about this." "Please don't," Sarah asked softly. "We don't need fame. But this could be a breakthrough in science." "Then let the breakthrough wait," Stella said with a gentle smile. Paul stayed in town, renting a room from old Mrs. Nora, and started visiting the Wolfs frequently. Ethan kept an eye on him at first, a young man hanging around his daughters, but soon realized Paul treated them like younger sisters or perhaps like rare, gifted wonders of nature. Linda, however, noticed something else, the way Paul looked at Jennifer Harris, the girl's first teacher, who now taught literature in the upper grades. And how Jennifer, a stunning woman in her 30s, considered an old maid by small-town standards, blushed whenever he did. "Girls," Linda asked one evening, "Paul Anderson and Jennifer Harris, what do you think?" "They'll get married in a year," both girls said in unison. "They'll have 2 kids, a boy and a girl." Linda laughed. "You've already seen their children?" "Not seen," Stella corrected her. "Felt. They're meant for each other, they just don't know it yet." And sure enough, 6 months later Paul proposed to Jennifer. The whole town celebrated their summer wedding. The girls were bridesmaids, wearing matching blue dresses with wreaths of wildflowers. At the wedding, Stella whispered to Jennifer, "The first one will be a boy. Name him Mike." Jennifer blushed. "Stella, stop that." But a year later, she gave birth to a baby boy, and of course, his name was Mike. In 11th grade, something happened that nearly ended in tragedy. A self-proclaimed healer named Herman Edwards arrived in the county, a handsome man in his 50s, with a neatly trimmed beard and expensive suits. He opened a spiritual healing center and charged enormous fees for his sessions. When he heard about the girls, he showed up at the Wolf House. "I'm a colleague of your daughter's," he said smoothly. "I'd like to offer a partnership." "What kind of partnership?" Ethan asked coldly. "They can work at my center. I'll handle promotion and clients. We'll split the profits 50-50. "Thanks, but no," Ethan said firmly. But Herman didn't give up. He came back several times, begging, offering money, making promises. Then he started threatening. "You don't know who you're dealing with. I've got friends in high places." Ethan threw him out. Soon after, the trouble began. First, a child welfare inspection arrived to check the home environment. Then the tax office, looking for irregularities in Ethan's lumber business. Then the health department, to inspect sanitary conditions. "Don't worry, Dad," Sarah said calmly. "That man will get into trouble soon enough." "How do you know?" "I see it. He's lying to people, taking their money, not healing anyone. Soon a woman whose husband dies because of him will sue." And she was right. A month later, a scandal erupted. The wife of a wealthy businessman who had died of cancer after abandoning real treatment for Herman's fake energy therapy filed a lawsuit. It turned out Herman had no medical education at all. His diplomas were bought online. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud, and all the inspections at the Wolf's house suddenly stopped. Graduation came, a touching and joyful day. The girls received gold medals. They were top of their class. "So, what colleges are you applying to?" the teachers asked. "I'm going into education," said Sarah. "And I'm applying to medical school," said Stella. "Here in the county?" "No, in New York," Sarah replied. Everyone was surprised. The girls had never mentioned New York before. "Aunt Vera will help," Sarah explained. And she did. By then, Vera had become a senior government official in the ministry and arranged for their admission and housing. Ethan and Linda didn't want to let their daughters go. New York was big and dangerous. But the girls reassured them. "We can feel danger, remember? Nothing bad will happen to us." "What about the people here?" Linda worried. "Who will heal them?" "We'll come back every weekend," Stella promised. And they kept their promise. For all 5 years of their studies, every Saturday they came home, saw patients on Sundays, and returned to the city Monday morning. In New York, they lived with Aunt Vera, who gave them a room in her 3-bedroom apartment. "Girls, you're extraordinary," she often said. "You could build incredible careers here." But they weren't interested in fame. They studied diligently but without obsession. Sarah tutored troubled kids on the side. They always listened to her for some reason. Stella volunteered at a hospice, caring for terminal patients. "They go more peacefully when I'm there," she explained simply. In her 3rd year, Stella met the doctor she dreamed of as a child. Anthony, a final-year med student, future oncologist. Serious, kind, from a long line of doctors. He saw Stella in the hospice and fell in love at first sight. "You're an angel," he said instead of hello. "No, just a student," Stella smiled. But Anthony was smitten. He courted her gently, respectfully, persistently. 6 months later, he proposed. Sarah met her own destiny in her 4th year. She went to do her teaching internship at a school for troubled teens, and that's where she saw a young history teacher named Stephen. Tall, broad-shouldered, a former soldier who'd become a teacher to help kids find their way. He saw Sarah and froze. "Are you the new intern?" "Yes. I'm Stephen." "Sarah." And that was it. The spark flared instantly. By the end of her internship, Stephen already knew he would marry her and no one else. The weddings took place on the same day. The sisters wanted to get married together, just like they'd done everything else in life together. The whole town celebrated, and half of New York came too. Vera cried tears of joy. "My girls have grown up." Linda and Ethan were glowing with happiness. And the sisters, now young women in dazzling white dresses, danced with their husbands, whispering something in their ears. "What did she tell you?" Anthony asked Stephen afterward. "That we'll have a son." "And you?" "A daughter." The men exchanged looks and laughed. With wives like ours, life will never be boring. After the wedding, both couples stayed in New York to build their careers. But they came home every weekend. The Wolf House was still full of people. The fame of the Miracle Girls hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown. Now visitors came not just from the county but from New York too, thanks to Vera accidentally letting the secret slip. Yet the sisters, now women, didn't accept everyone. "You should see a regular doctor," Stella told a rich woman with migraines. "And you need a psychologist, not me," Sarah gently told the hysterical mother of a troubled child. But when truly sick people came, those without hope, they helped. Like the little boy with leukemia whom doctors gave 6 months to live. Stella visited him every day for a month, doing something quiet and inexplicable. 6 months later, his tests showed remission. "It wasn't me," Stella said. "He just really wanted to live. I only helped him a little." And every one of their predictions came true. Sarah had a son, named Ethan after his grandfather. Stella had a daughter, named Linda after her grandmother. The children grew up ordinary, without any special gifts, but they were kind, compassionate, and bright. "Maybe it's better this way," Stella said. "A normal life is a peaceful one." Ethan and Linda grew old, but happily. Their house was always full of grandchildren, friends, people seeking help. Linda tended the garden well into her 70s. Ethan still worked in the forest. "We're rich people," he often said. "We have everything: daughters, grandchildren, health. And love," Linda added, hugging him. One day, when the sisters were in their 30s, a man from the past arrived, their father. the one who had once thrown them out of the camp. Now he was old, sick, and poor. "I'm dying," he said. "I wanted to see you and ask for forgiveness." The sisters exchanged glances. "We forgave you long ago," said Sarah. "But we can't help you," added Stella. "I know. I'm not asking. Just forgive me." They gave him money, fed him, sent him to a hospital. He died a week later. The sisters didn't cry. That past felt far away. Then something happened no one expected. Linda fell ill. Cancer. Fast, aggressive. "Mom, we'll heal you," the daughters said. But Linda shook her head. "My time has come. I've lived a happy life. You gave it back to me when I'd already lost hope." The sisters did everything they could, but the disease was stronger, or maybe Linda herself had decided to go, tired and at peace. She died quietly in her sleep, holding their hands. Her last words were, "Thank you for choosing us." The whole town came to the funeral, and half of New York returned again. Everyone cried, even the toughest men. Ethan held himself together, but the sisters saw that something inside him had dimmed. 6 months later, Ethan was gone too. The doctors said heart failure, but the daughters knew he'd gone after Linda. He couldn't live without her. They placed a single monument on their shared grave. The inscription read, "They gave shelter to 2 orphans and found an entire world." The Wolf House never stood empty. The sisters and their families moved in and opened a kind of help center, not for money, but for anyone in need, some with words, some with deeds, and some with that mysterious healing gift that still lived within them. Grandchildren grew up, great-grandchildren were born, and life went on. And on quiet evenings, when the whole family gathered around the big table, Sarah and Stella would tell the story of 2 little gypsy girls a kind man once picked up on a dark road, and of the woman who believed in miracles, and of how love itself can heal. If only you have faith and the courage to open your heart. In town, people still tell legends about the miracle girls. Few remember who they really were or where they came from, but everyone knows, if you're in true need, go to the Wolf House. They'll help you there. Because goodness, once planted, blooms for generations. And somewhere above, Ethan and Linda watch their daughters and smile. They know everything turned out just right. Those 2 frightened girls on the night road had become their destiny, their happiness, their legacy. It was a true miracle, not one that heals the body, but the kind that heals souls and gives life meaning. But the story didn't end there. Life in the Wolf House continued to flourish, bringing new trials and new miracles. Ethan's grandson, Sarah's son, was an unusual boy. At 10 years old, he didn't have the gift of healing like his mother and aunt, but he had something else. He could see people's souls. "Mom, why is it dark inside Uncle Nick?" he once asked, looking at their alcoholic neighbor. "Because Uncle Nick is sad," Sarah explained softly, "and he doesn't know how to stop." The boy went up to the neighbor. "Uncle Nick, do you want to play with my dog? When I'm sad, Rex cheers me up." Nicholas, a rough man, was moved to tears. From that day, he started drinking less. The dog needed care, walks, attention. A year later, he quit completely. The boy had helped him find a reason to live again. Little Linda, Stella's daughter, was completely different, cheerful, mischievous, a normal girl. But when her best friend Kate was hospitalized for appendicitis and terrified of surgery, Linda came to see her. "Don't be scared," she said. "My mom says doctors are good people, they help. And I'll wait for you with ice cream." Simple words, but Kate stopped being afraid. And after surgery, Linda actually brought her ice cream, smuggling it under her jacket. A young nurse named Ellen saw it but didn't scold her. She understood that sometimes, ice cream from a friend can heal better than medicine. Ellen often came to the Wolf House, first for work when Linda was ill, then just to visit. She was an orphan who'd grown up in foster care, a nurse by calling, with a heart made for helping others. Sarah and Stella came to love her like a younger sister. "Ellen, stay with us," Stella said one evening. "There's plenty of room, and work in town too. You already feel like family." Ellen burst into tears. "I've never had a family." "Now you do," Sarah said, hugging her. Ellen moved into the Wolf House and became indispensable. She worked mornings at the town clinic and helped the sisters with patients in the evenings. She had no healing powers, but her gentle hands and kind heart often did just as much. A year later, she met her soulmate, a new sheriff named Matthew, a former Marine. He saw Ellen and was gone, head over heels in love. Even the old ladies in town sighed, now that's real love. They were married 6 months later, and the whole town celebrated. Ellen wore a dress sewn by Sarah and a wreath of wildflowers braided by Stella. Now you're truly our sister, the twins told her, embracing the bride. But not everything stayed peaceful. One day, a strange group arrived in town, 3 men and 1 woman, all dressed in black, carrying odd devices. They introduced themselves as scientists from the Institute of Paranormal Studies. "We want to study the phenomenon of your daughters," said the gray-haired lead professor, Dr. Kramsky. "My daughters aren't a phenomenon, they're ordinary women," Stephen, Sarah's husband, said sharply. "Ordinary women don't heal with their hands," the professor countered. "And they don't predict the future," added his assistant, a thin woman with glasses. The sisters refused to take part in any studies, but the scientists wouldn't give up. They rented a house in the nearby town and began following the sisters everywhere, photographing, recording, observing them. It got so bad they even tried to secretly take samples from the children, waiting for them outside the school. But little Ethan sensed something was wrong. "Mom, that lady's acting weird. She wants to give me a shot, but I'm not sick." Sarah rushed to the school and raised hell. The principal called the police, and the scientists were escorted out of the county. Before leaving, Professor Kramsky said, "You can't hide your gift forever. Sooner or later, the world will find out." "Then let it," Stella replied calmly, "when it's ready." But the world, it seemed, wasn't ready yet. A month after the incident with the scientists, an Orthodox monk arrived in town, Father Seraphim, a fanatic who considered any healing outside the church heresy. He started a real crusade, going door to door, convincing people not to seek help from witches. "They're selling your souls to the devil," he shouted in the town square. The local priest, Father Michael, tried to calm him down. "Father Seraphim, don't judge. Gifts come in many forms." But the zealot wouldn't listen. Things escalated quickly. Father Seraphim gathered a crowd of fanatics, mostly outsiders, and marched to the Wolf House. They demanded repentance, threatened to purify with fire. Sheriff Matthew called for reinforcements, but before the police arrived, something unexpected happened. 5-year-old Linda, the granddaughter, walked up to Father Seraphim. "Mister, why are you angry?" "You hurt inside." Then she touched his hand. The monk shuddered, turned pale, and dropped to his knees. Then he stood, silent, and walked away. He was never seen in town again. A year later, Sarah received a letter. Father Seraphim had become a hermit, devoting his life to prayer and repentance. "The girl showed me my soul," he wrote, "and I was terrified." Meanwhile, the younger generation was growing up. Ethan Jr., at 14, revealed a gift of his own, not for healing, but for working with wood. He could turn an ordinary branch into something breathtaking. "The wood tells me what it wants to become," he explained. His sculptures, sometimes animals, sometimes human faces, sometimes abstract shapes, were soon being bought by galleries in the city. But the boy never got conceited. "It's Grandpa Ethan working through me," he said. "I can feel him." 12-year-old Linda, on the other hand, started writing poetry, real poetry. Not childish rhymes, but deep, soul-piercing verses. Her literature teacher, a young graduate student named Nicole who had recently moved to town, was stunned. "This is the level of serious literature. It needs to be published." But Linda was shy. "It's not me writing. It's Grandma Linda, through me. I just write it down." Her first book came out when she was 16. It was called Voices of Our Lineage, and the title couldn't have been more fitting. The sisters continued to help the sick, but now most of their patients were children. For some reason, they were especially good with them. One day, they brought a little girl named Liza, 8 years old, bright and lively, but unable to walk due to cerebral palsy. Her parents, simple working-class people, had saved for years for her treatment. "We'll give you everything we have, just please help her." But the sisters refused the money. "Liza will live with us for 3 months. Then we'll see." For 3 months, Liza lived like part of the family. The sisters worked with her daily, not just therapy, but lessons, games, and walks. Most importantly, she and young Linda became inseparable, like sisters. Then came the miracle, not sudden, but steady. Liza started to walk, first with help, then with a cane, and by the end of the 3rd month, all on her own. Her parents wept with joy. "How can we ever thank you?" "Just love your daughter," Sarah said with a smile. "And come visit." Liza returned every vacation. When she grew up, she became a rehabilitation doctor. "I want to help kids like me," she said. And she did, opening a children's rehab center where traditional medicine worked hand in hand with the Wolf Sisters' methods. Not everything could be explained scientifically, but it worked, and that was what mattered. One autumn evening, someone knocked on the door. On the porch stood a young Roma woman holding a little girl, about 3 years old. "Are you Sarah and Stella?" "Yes. I'm Rada, granddaughter of Grandma Rose from your old camp. Before she died, she told me, if trouble comes, go to the girls who healed Uncle Roman." The sisters exchanged glances. Uncle Roman had been from their camp, an old gypsy man with crippled legs. They really had helped him once, when they were still children. "What kind of trouble?" "My daughter, Sarah. She doesn't speak or hear. The doctors say she's deaf and mute, but I know she hears with her heart. Please help her." Little Sarah was extraordinary. She truly couldn't hear or talk, but she understood everything just by looking. And she had something else, a gift like Sarah and Stella's. She could sense other people's pain and take it away. The sisters saw it instantly. "She's not deaf," Stella said. "She's shut herself off from the world because she hears too much, the pain of everyone around her." Working with Sarah took 6 months. The sisters taught her how to filter others' pain, how not to absorb it all. Meanwhile, Rada stayed in town, working at the clinic and caring for the elderly. At first, the locals were wary. She was a gypsy, after all. But Rada's kindness and hard work soon won them over. And when she cured old Martha's terrible cough with her herbs, the town fully accepted her. By spring, the miracle happened. Sarah spoke. Her first word was Mama. Rada burst into tears. The second was Auntie, for Sarah and Stella. Within a month, the girl was chatting nonstop. It turned out she'd been storing words inside all along, waiting for the moment she could let them out. "I'm not afraid of other people's pain anymore," she told the sisters. "You taught me how to turn it into light." And indeed, Sarah began to heal, her own way, like a child's magic. She would touch someone's sore spot, and the pain would fade. Not the illness, but the pain, and sometimes that mattered even more. Rada and Sarah stayed in town for good. They bought a small house. Stephen and Anthony helped with the renovation, Sarah and Stella with the furniture. Sarah started school, made friends, and her gift grew stronger every year. "She'll be stronger than us," Sarah once said. "Each new generation is," Stella agreed. Meanwhile, life in the town brought its own dramas and small miracles. Nicole, the young teacher who had once praised Linda's poetry, fell in love with a married man, Peter, the school's assistant principal. He loved her too but couldn't bring himself to leave his wife. Children, a house, routine. Nicole suffered, lost weight, lost interest in life. 15-year-old Linda couldn't stand it. "Aunt Nicole, why are you torturing yourself? Love should give you wings, not take them away." "You don't understand, Linda. That's adult life." "I do. You love someone who doesn't deserve you. If he did, he wouldn't make you suffer." Nicole thought about that. A week later, she left for the city to pursue her doctorate. Before leaving, she hugged Linda. "Thank you, sweetheart. You're right, wings matter more." Peter tried to win Nicole back, even left his wife, but it was too late. In the city, Nicole met a young scientist, married him, and had 2 children. Years later, she returned to town as a professor, bringing her books. "Linda saved me," she told Sarah. "Her poems, her wisdom, you've raised an extraordinary girl." At 18, Ethan Jr. received a commission that changed his life. A collector from Germany, Hermuller, saw his work at a regional exhibition. "I want you to create a sculpture for my museum," he said. "The theme is reconciliation." Ethan thought for a month, then crafted a masterpiece, 2 hands reaching toward each other, carved from different types of wood symbolizing different peoples. Between them, a dove, so delicately carved it looked alive. Hermuller was speechless. "It's genius," Hermuller said softly. "Young man, you must study. I'll pay for your education at any art academy in the world." But Ethan shook his head. "Thank you, but I want to stay here. My art feeds on this land, on these people. In the city, I'd wither." The German didn't quite understand, but he accepted the commission and paid generously. With that money, Ethan built a large, sunlit workshop where he could work and teach local kids the art of woodcarving. When Sarah and Stella turned 50, guests came from all over the country and even from abroad, people they had once helped. Daniel Cross, the boy with cerebral palsy, arrived as a grown man, now a successful sports physician. He brought his wife and 3 children. "Aunt Sarah, Aunt Stella, you gave me life." "You gave it to yourself," Sarah smiled. "We just helped a little." Even Joan Powell came, the same education official to whom Sarah had once predicted an illness. Now she ran a major charity foundation for cancer patients. "You changed my life, girls." "Well, women now," she laughed, hugging the sisters. But the most unexpected guest was old Professor Kramsky, the one who had once tried to study them. He came humbled. Forgive an old fool. I tried to dissect a miracle when all I needed was to believe in it. He brought a gift, his book The Unexplained Among Us, with an entire chapter devoted to the Wolf sisters. It was written with respect, without any attempt to label or define them. Some things aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be accepted, with gratitude. That was how the chapter ended. At the celebration, Stella announced something new. Anthony and I are taking in children with special needs. We can give them what no orphanage ever could, love and faith in miracles. Their first child was a boy named Johnny, an autistic orphan from the county home. A child who didn't speak or make eye contact until a month after moving in. His first word was home. 6 months later he chatted nonstop, mostly about stars and numbers. Sarah and Stephen also took in a child, a baby girl named and found in an apartment building as a newborn. She had a heart defect, and the doctors gave her little chance. But survived, grew up, and became an artist. I paint what I see with my heart, she said. Her bright, radiant paintings were sold in galleries around the world. The Wolf House expanded. They built a new wing and planted a large garden filled not only with vegetables but also with healing herbs. Rada was the expert and taught everyone. In the garden stood a gazebo where, on warm summer evenings, for generations of family gathered together. But the biggest step came when they opened a real healing center. Not a medical clinic in the usual sense, but a place that tended to both body and soul. Officially it was called the House of Mercy, but everyone simply called it the Wolf Place. There worked not only the sisters, but Ellen, Rada, their grown children, and visiting volunteers, people who believed that kindness and love could still work miracles. Sarah's daughter and discovered her gift unexpectedly, at 20, just when she had made peace with being ordinary. It happened dramatically. Her friend was in a car accident, fighting for her life, and sat in the hospital hallway and suddenly knew she could help. She went into the ICU, placed her hands on her friend, and the girl opened her eyes. The doctors called it a miracle, but knew the ancestral gift had simply awakened, waiting for its moment. Linda Jr. became a famous poet at 25. She never chased fame. She lived in town, taught literature at school, and kept writing. She married the son of Liza, the girl with cerebral palsy her mother and aunt had once healed. The circle closed, 2 families became one, and it felt right. Ethan Jr. married Sarah, Rada's daughter. Their wedding was a true celebration, both townsfolk and Roma together, singing in 2 languages, dancing until dawn. When their son was born, they named him after his great-grandfather, Ethan. "Let's have a third Ethan in the family," Sarah said. "It's a good tradition." Little Ethan 3 was born with a gift, not healing, but something else. He could see the past of objects. He'd touch an old photograph and describe what the person felt when it was taken. Hold his grandfather's tool and show exactly how he'd used it. "He's the keeper of the family's memory," Stella said. When Sarah and Stella turned 60, a documentary crew arrived. The director, a young woman named Daria, explained, "I don't want to make a sensation. I want to tell a story about love that creates miracles." For the first time in their lives, the sisters agreed. The film was tender and raw, without glamour or mysticism, just the story of how 2 abandoned girls found a family and gave hope to hundreds of others. After it premiered, pilgrims from all over the world came to the Wolf House. But the sisters set one rule: they accepted only those truly in need. No thrill seekers, no journalists, no researchers, only the suffering. And they helped, as always, for free. Their one unbreakable rule: a gift is never for sale. One day, an American millionaire came. His daughter had late-stage cancer. He offered millions, but the sisters refused. "Bring the girl. We'll see what we can do." The girl, 16-year-old Mary, was beautiful despite her illness, but her eyes were empty, resigned. "I know I'm going to die," she told them. "Everyone dies," Stella replied. "The question is when and how. Do you want to live?" "I don't know. Until you do, we can't help you." Mary stayed with them for a month. There was no conventional treatment, she just lived. She helped Rada with herbs, learned woodcarving from Ethan, listened to Linda's poetry. Most importantly, she saw people who refused to give up. By the second week she said, "I want to live." And that's when the true healing began. The sisters, Rada, even little Sarah worked together. 3 months later, her tests showed remission. The American doctors didn't believe it, retested 3 times. "It's impossible." "For love, nothing is impossible," said Mary's father, holding her in his arms. Mary went home but never lost touch. Every year she returned, to what she called home, the Wolf House. She became a doctor and opened a clinic in America combining modern medicine with healing through compassion. "You taught me the most important thing," she wrote. "Medicine without love is powerless." But life brought losses too. Old Father Michael passed away quietly in his sleep. The whole town and the surrounding villages came to his funeral. The new priest, Father Alexander, a young Irishman, eyed the wolves warily at first. But when his wife nearly died in childbirth, and Stella literally brought her back, his heart changed. "The Lord gives gifts to different people," he said in his sermon afterward, "and it's not for us to judge his ways." Then Vera, Linda's sister, fell ill, cancer again, swift and merciless. The sisters tried to help, but Vera stopped them. "My time has come. I've had a good life. I've seen you grow, seen your children. That's enough." She died peacefully, holding her niece's hands. Her last words were, "Thank you for giving me my sister back. The years after her recovery were the best of my life." Grandchildren grew, great-grandchildren were born. The Wolf House became its own small universe, always alive. Mornings full of laughter, afternoons helping the sick, evenings of family dinners where 30 people sometimes gathered around the table. And every night before bed, Sarah and Stella would walk into the garden and look up at the stars. "Remember when Dad found us?" one would ask. "I remember. We thought it was the end, but it was the beginning." When the sisters were nearly 70, something extraordinary happened. An old Roma man arrived in town, not their grandfather, another one. He introduced himself as their uncle, the brother of their late father. "I've searched for you for years," he said. "I came to ask forgiveness for my brother." The sisters listened silently. "He regretted it, you know. His new wife left, took everything. He drank, called your names, cried. But he couldn't find you, the camp had moved far away." "We know," Sarah said softly. "He came. We forgave him." The old man took out a small wooden box. "This belongs to you, from your mother." Inside were photographs of a young, beautiful Roma woman holding 2 infants in her arms, and a note. "Sarah and Stella, my little stars. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Remember, you are special. Your gift is from God. Help people, but don't forget yourselves. Love conquers everything. Mom." The sisters wept, staring at the photograph. "We look like her," Stella whispered. "Yes, and our daughters look like her too, and our granddaughters." Their uncle left the box and went away. They never saw him again, but held no grudge. The past stayed where it belonged, in the past. And life went on. Great-grandson Ethan IV, the son of Ethan III, was born with an astonishing gift. He could talk to plants. At 5 years old, he said, "Grandma Sarah, the apple tree is crying. Her roots hurt." They checked, and he was right. The roots were rotting. They treated the tree, and that year it produced a record harvest. "Looks like we have our own gardener," Stella laughed. Great-granddaughter Maria, Anne's daughter, could see people's auras. "Aunt Ellen's aura is golden," she said, "because she's kind. Uncle Nick's used to be gray, but now it's blue, he's happy again." Nicholas, the same neighbor who had once battled alcoholism, hadn't touched a drop in 10 years. He'd remarried, helped raise grandkids, and lived peacefully. Life moved forward, births, weddings, funerals. But the Wolf House remained constant, a source of strength, a place where help was always given. Not only healing help, sometimes a kind word, advice, a cup of tea and pie, or just the chance to be heard. When the sisters turned 80, so many people came that they had to set up tents in the garden. Guests arrived from abroad, even Mary with her family, and old Muller, now frail but still admiring Ethan Jr.'s art. People came from nearby towns, from the city, from the capital. The house couldn't hold everyone who wanted to congratulate them. During the celebration, Sarah stood and spoke. "We've lived an amazing life. From 2 orphans abandoned on the roadside to the matriarchs of a great family. And it's all thanks to 2 people no longer with us, Ethan and Linda Wolf. They gave us not just shelter, but love, family, and a reason to live. Let's raise a toast to them." Everyone stood, glasses lifted. And then a miracle happened, maybe the last, maybe not. In the garden, birds suddenly began to sing, all of them at once, though it was evening and they should have been asleep. Their song was so beautiful, so harmonious, it felt like a heavenly choir. Little Ethan IV looked up and said, "It's great-grandpa and great-grandma. They came to the party. They're saying thank you." The sisters smiled through their tears. Around them stood their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a big, loving, extraordinary family. Each with their own gift, their own destiny, yet all united by one thing: love and faith in miracles. You know, Stella said to Sarah that night, after everyone had left and the house grew quiet, we kept our promise. What promise? The one we made to Mom before she died, to help others, but not forget ourselves. Yes, Sarah nodded softly. We've helped thousands. We built the family we once dreamed of. And we taught our children the most important thing, that love truly conquers all, even death, especially death, because love lives on, in children, grandchildren, and in everyone we've helped. They sat together in the same gazebo Ethan Jr. had built, holding hands like they did as little girls, gazing up at the stars. Somewhere out there, among those stars, were their parents, both the ones who gave them life and the ones who gave them love. Everyone they had loved, and who had loved them. And in the morning, life went on. A new patient arrived, a boy with a rare illness. The doctors were helpless, his parents in despair. But despair never stayed long in the Wolf house. Let's see what we can do, said great-granddaughter Maria, now 18, who had inherited her great-grandmother's gift in full. She began to work, with love, with patience, with faith. Because in the Wolf house, they knew miracles happen. You just have to believe, and love, and not be afraid to open your heart to another human being, just like, long ago, Ethan Wolf once opened his heart to two frightened girls on a dark road, and changed not only their lives, but the lives of hundreds who would one day be healed by those same girls. The Wolf House still stands today, larger, changed, but at its core the same. A place where people are helped, where miracles are believed in, where love conquers pain, fear, and even death. And somewhere in the heavens, Ethan holds Linda close and says, "See, I told you, the girls were special." And Linda smiles. They weren't the special ones. Love was. The love we gave them, and the love they carried forward. And that's the truth, because real miracles aren't in the power to heal with your hands. Real miracles lie in the power to love, to forgive, to believe, and to help. And as long as there are people willing to open their hearts to others, miracles will keep happening. In the Wolf House, they know that for sure. But the story didn't end there. A year after the sister's 80th birthday, something happened that shook the whole county. In the neighboring district, a terrible accident occurred. A school bus full of children was hit by a train. 15 kids were in critical condition. The local hospital couldn't cope. The chief doctor, a wise and decisive woman, made a desperate call to the Wolf House. "I know this breaks every rule," she said, "but please come." Everyone who could help went: Sarah, Stella, their children, grandchildren, even 19-year-old Maria. They worked 3 days straight without rest. The doctors did their part, surgeries, IVs, machines, while the wolves did theirs, holding hands, singing softly, whispering comfort, drawing pain away. Later, the nurses swore it felt like angels had entered the ICU. Of the 15 children, 14 survived. The youngest boy didn't make it. His injuries were too severe. Stella held him in her arms in his final moments, singing a lullaby in Romani. The boy smiled just before closing his eyes forever. "He left without pain or fear," Stella said through tears. "Sometimes that's all we can give." Afterward, the regional health minister himself came to the Wolf House. William Peters, a doctor by training, sat down at their big kitchen table and said plainly, "I don't understand how you do it, but I've seen the results. I want to make this official. Let's open a center for alternative medicine at the regional hospital. You'll be consultants, you'll teach others." The sisters exchanged a look. "William," Sarah said gently, "our gift can't be taught like multiplication tables. You either have it, or you don't. But something can be passed on," he insisted. "Your approach, your methods." "Yes," Stella said. "You can teach people to love their patients, to see the person, not the illness. That's already half the healing." The minister thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, then come once a month. Hold seminars for the medical staff. Not about miracles, about humanity." And that's how they agreed. The Wolf seminars became legendary. Doctors from all over the country came to listen as two elderly women, who looked decades younger than their years, spoke about how medicine without heart is nothing more than a set of procedures. Anthony, Stella's husband and a respected oncologist himself, provided the scientific grounding. "The placebo effect doesn't work because patients are foolish," he explained. "It works because faith and hope trigger the body's own mechanisms for healing. My wife and her sisters simply know how to awaken that faith." One day, a journalist from a major national magazine came to one of the seminars, a young, ambitious woman named Karina. She planned to write an exposé about frauds and fake healers. She sat in the back row, ready with her recorder and a notebook filled with snide questions. But after an hour, she put both aside and just listened. When Sarah told the story of the boy who had died in Stella's arms, without pain or fear, Karina began to cry. After the seminar, she approached them. "I'm sorry," she said. "I came here to expose you." "We know," Stella smiled. "How?" "We can feel it. Your soul is hurting. Who did you lose?" Karina sank right down onto the hospital floor and burst into tears. "My daughter. 2 years ago. Leukemia." The sisters hugged her, letting her cry until the tears ran dry. Then Sarah said softly, "She hasn't really left. She's still in your heart. But it hurts so much." "Pain is a form of connection too," Sarah said. "When it stops hurting, what remains is light, memory. But to reach that, you need time. And forgiveness." "Forgiveness? Of whom?" "Yourself. You blame yourself for not being able to save her." Karina nodded, unable to speak. "Not everything is within our power," Stella said gently. "Sometimes children come into this world only briefly, to teach us how to love more deeply." Karina left, but a month later she returned. "I want to write a book about you. A real one. Honest. About how a miracle isn't magic, it's the daily labor of love." She worked on it for 2 years, visiting every month, living in the Wolf House, observing, writing. Her book, The House Where Hope Lives, became a bestseller. But more importantly, Karina herself was healed of her grief. She married, had a son, and named him Ethan, in honor of the man who had once opened his heart to a miracle. Meanwhile, the younger generation of the Wolf family continued creating miracles of their own. Great-grandson Ethan IV, at 15, designed an extraordinary garden, not just beautiful, but healing. He chose every plant intuitively, arranging them in ways that affected people's moods and emotions. Those battling depression would sit for hours beside his lavender and mint beds and leave smiling. Those who couldn't sleep would nap beneath the old linden tree he had saved and renamed the Dream Tree. "How do you know which plant heals what?" people asked. "They tell me," Ethan replied. "Roses want to give love, nettles strength, chamomile peace. You just have to listen." By 18, he'd written a book titled Conversations with Plants, not a scientific manual but a poetic reflection on the soul of nature. It was published in a small print run but sold out instantly. Botanists scoffed, yet his results were undeniable. The garden truly healed. Great-granddaughter Maria, the one who saw auras, became a psychologist. But not an ordinary one. She could see the wounds of the soul as clearly as others saw cuts on the skin. "There's darkness here," she would say to patients, pointing to the area around the heart or the head. "It's old pain. Let's see where it came from." And people would remember childhood traumas, unhealed grief, tears never shed. Maria helped them face it, release it, and heal. At first, her colleagues were skeptical. But when patients long deemed hopeless began smiling again after a few sessions, skepticism turned to respect. One day, they brought her a teenage girl who had stopped speaking after her mother's death. Psychiatrists had tried everything, diagnoses, medications, but the girl remained silent. Maria looked at her aura and gasped. It was a tangled web of dark knots. "You're holding your mother's words inside," Maria said gently. "You're afraid that if you let them out, you'll lose her." The girl looked up with wide eyes and nodded. "But your mom wants you to speak, to laugh, to live. She's not in the words, she's in your heart." The girl burst into tears and whispered her first word in 6 months. "Mom." Then the words poured out in a flood, all the unspoken thoughts and bottled up feelings. A month later, she was chatting endlessly, and a year after that, she enrolled in a theater school. "I'm going to be an actress," she told Maria. "I'll give people the emotions they're too afraid to feel themselves." By then, the Wolf House had turned into a real complex. 2 new wings had been added, one for visiting patients, another for teaching. In the garden, they built a chapel, not tied to any faith, just a place for prayer or silence. Ethan Jr. and his students painted its walls. The murals showed hands reaching toward each other, embracing, healing, blessing. "Hands," he said, "are love's greatest instrument." Then something extraordinary happened. A delegation from India arrived, 3 healing monks who had heard of the American sisters with the gift. The eldest, a man of indeterminate age with eyes like a child's, spoke with the sisters and said, "You do what we do, you just call it by another name. We say energy, you say love. We say chakras, you say soul. But the essence is the same, helping the suffering." The monks stayed for a week, exchanging knowledge, learning from one another. Before they left, the elder said, I've seen many miracles, but never love as pure as yours. That is the truest miracle of all. By then, the townspeople were long used to the wolf house. They were proud of it, even bragged a little. We have a world healing center here. Children ran through Ethan Ivy's garden as if it were their own backyard. The elderly came to drink tea, to talk. And whenever someone got sick, they went to the wolves first, and only afterward to the hospital. Or vice versa, depending on what kind of pain it was. The new county head, a young energetic man named Paul, the son of Jennifer Harris and Paul Anderson, turned the wolf house into a special kind of landmark. It's not a museum and not a zoo, he said. It's a place of power. You can visit, but only with an open heart. A guest house for pilgrims was built, a parking lot, a proper road, but the wolf house itself remained untouched, alive, genuine, without gloss or commerce. Then came an event that made national headlines. A famous illusionist, David Carlo, an Italian touring across America, heard about the Wolf Sisters and publicly declared, "I'll expose these frauds. I'll show their miracles are nothing but tricks." He arrived with a TV crew and a load of equipment designed to catch deception. The sisters greeted him calmly. "Come in," they said. "See for yourself." David wandered through the house, searching for hidden devices, scanning the air for energy fields, found nothing. Finally, he demanded, "Show me your art." Just then, an ambulance brought a woman who had suffered a massive stroke, paralyzed, just like Linda once had been. The sisters began their work, singing softly, massaging her hands, whispering prayers. David filmed it all, waiting for some trick to reveal itself. An hour later, the woman moved the fingers of her paralyzed hand. David turned pale. "That's impossible." "For love, nothing is impossible," Sarah replied gently. The illusionist stayed for a week, watching how the sisters worked with the sick, how their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren each helped in their own way. On the third day, he approached Stella. "My mother is ill. Cancer. Stage 4. Bring her here." David's mother, a small Italian woman who spoke no English, didn't need words. The sisters worked with her through her son at first, then without translation, through touch, songs, and Rada's herbs. A month later, the woman began to recover. She didn't heal completely, miracles have their limits, but she lived 3 more years instead of the 3 months doctors had given her. David never performed any more exposés. On the contrary, he became a close friend of the Wolf family, visiting every year and bringing Italian medicines and wine. "I spent my whole life creating illusions," he would say, "and you destroy the biggest one, that miracles don't exist." Preparations for the sisters' 90th birthday were a community-wide effort, but a week before the celebration, Stella fell ill, her heart. The doctors shook their heads. At her age, there wasn't much they could do. But Sarah refused to give up. She sat by her sister's bed, holding her hands. "Don't you dare leave before me. We promised we'd go together." The whole family gathered around, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. They sang the same old Roma songs the sisters had once sung to Linda so many years ago. And Stella opened her eyes. "All right," she whispered. "I'll stay a little longer." The birthday celebration was smaller than planned but filled with warmth. Stella, though weak and seated in her chair, smiled the whole evening. When it came time for speeches, she said, "I've been thinking about our life. Sarah and I went from being unwanted orphans to, well, what are we now? Grandmothers of a great family. Healers. You know what we really are? Living proof that love creates miracles. Ethan and Linda Wolf loved 2 dirty little strangers, and this is the result. Love multiplies when it's given away." After that, the sisters began passing their work to the younger generation. Maria took over caring for the sick, Ethan tended the gardens, and the others, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, each found their own path in the family's calling. The sisters now mostly observed, advised, and blessed. "Our time is ending," Sarah would say, "but the work will remain." That autumn brought the sisters' final miracle. They brought in a boy from an orphanage, Johnny, 7 years old, who had suffered severe trauma after watching his parents die in front of him. He had completely shut down, wouldn't speak, wouldn't react to anything. Psychiatrists had tried everything with no success. The orphanage director, desperate, brought him to the Wolf House as a last hope. The sisters looked at the boy, exchanged glances. "Leave him with us for a month," Stella said. Johnny lived in the house like one of their own, eating at the family table, walking in the garden, sitting quietly nearby while the sisters worked with patience. He didn't speak, but he watched. And the sisters spoke to him as if he were an ordinary child, telling stories, asking for his help, praising him for small things. In the third week, Johnny came up to Sarah and whispered, "Are my mom and dad in heaven?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Are they happy there?" "Yes. And they want you to be happy here." The boy burst into tears, for the first time since the tragedy. He cried long and hard, and the sisters held him close, stroking his hair and whispering gentle words. By the end of the month, Johnny was not only speaking, he was laughing, playing with other kids, helping in the garden. The orphanage director couldn't believe her eyes. The sisters said softly, "Take him home. Not to the orphanage, to your home. He needs you." The woman, a career-driven administrator who'd never wanted children, adopted Johnny. "You awakened something I'd forgotten I had, motherhood," she told them. That winter, Stella passed away, peacefully, in her sleep, just as she'd wished. Sarah woke beside her. They'd shared the same room for years, like when they were little, and knew instantly. She didn't wake the family. She just sat beside her sister, took her hand, and whispered, "Thank you for everything. Say hello to Mom and Dad, and to Ethan and Linda. I'll be there soon." Only in the morning did she call the others. The funeral was both grand and humble. The entire county came. Her grandsons and great-grandsons carried the casket. At the grave, Sarah said, "She hasn't left us. She's in everyone she helped, and every child of our family, in this house, in this garden, everywhere." And as if to prove her words, a flock of birds suddenly took off from the trees and circled above the cemetery, singing that same tune the sisters once sang to the sick. Sarah lived for another year. She grew frail, but continued to receive visitors, talking with them, giving advice, blessings, peace. The day before she passed, she called the whole family together. "I see Stella, and Linda and Ethan, and our mother. They're calling me. Thank you for everything. Keep going. The Wolf House must stand and keep helping people." She died at dawn, a smile on her face. Her great-grandson Ethan later said that the moment his great-grandmother passed, every plant in the garden bloomed, even those that only flowered in spring. It was her farewell. The sisters were buried side by side under a single monument. On it was engraved, "Sarah and Stella Wolf, they taught us the greatest truth, love is the greatest miracle." The Wolf House still stands today. The sisters' great-grandchildren, now grown, carry on their legacy. The sick, the hopeless, the lost still come there and always find something: help, comfort, hope. Not always healing of the body, that's beyond human power, but always healing of the soul. And in the vast, lush garden, now like a piece of paradise, stands a gazebo with 2 benches where the sisters once loved to sit. Anyone who sits there feels a quiet warmth and peace, as if 2 old Roma women were still there, holding hands and gazing at the stars. And whispering, "Love conquers all, even death, especially death, because true love never dies." And that is the simple, pure truth.